Recorded April 28th, 2025. Good afternoon, Ray. Good afternoon, Rod. How are you doing? Ray,
I'm
how are you doing?
amazing, amazing. It's been a whirlwind. I'm at the Palace Hotel in town for RSA, so it's been an adventure getting to see colleagues behind the screens, right, in real life. That's always fun. I'm mostly in a dungeon for as you can. There's a light here as opposed to my what did you call it before my
I'm
basement lighting or my
no, no,
my
no, no, no. You have a very interesting and soothing parlor.
parlor
I thought it
light.
was more like one of those rooms where you chain somebody up when they're abducted.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
that was exactly what I was thinking of for my home decor.
Yeah,
But
I pulled
here
it
we
off.
are with the lighting and getting to chat with several of our partners. So I had a wonderful, I was invited to the Blue Voyant dinner that um,
Nice.
was hosted yesterday. I ran into Chris Sims, who I believe is the CTO of Bulletproof. Amazing getting to chat with Dave, who was on the show from Armor. So kind of making the rounds, but just like running into people. So very organic. It's been pretty extraordinary. And then obviously watching the presentations yesterday at pre-day and today, mostly focused on agentic AI. So I feel very privileged to be here. If the connection goes out, it's just the network, not that somebody super cool came by to chat. I'll just bring them on screen if they show
You
up.
could look at you out there evangelizing the show, naming all, dropping names. Big shout out to Chris Sims. Been on the show, and
I saw him in Toronto. I saw him in Toronto in December. Was it December? Yes, something like that.
Might be. Yeah, yeah. Well, sounds like you're having a good time out there. What about you, Rod?
What about me? I'm sort of surprised that I'm going to upload this, see if it works. Oh, I'm sort of surprised that Ray didn't mention this. What did we announce today at RSA?
Would you stop?
Oh, yeah. I thought that was you said agentic AI and but we announced our agents in preview today, didn't we? Was that today or yesterday? Because I know I'm super jealous. This is why I'm trying to plug you to tell us about it, because I'm super jealous that you're actually there, because it's RSA is great.
Yeah, they showcased it during pre-day, so we had Basu and Dorothy Lee walk us through many of the agents. We have purview agents, as well as what I thought was particularly cool, and I'm excited. That's running into the partners is something that I'm pretty passionate about, focused on the greater holistic approach to incorporating managed services with the Copilot agents, right? And so how does that play out? Hey, Nishan is visiting us.
There he is. Hey, I'll see him. I'll actually see him next week. Tell him.
I love how Rod comes up over the top. Ray, I think you mean specifically the Security Copilot agents, and then on top of it, I'm also meeting with Nishan. So
Oh, no.
bear with me. I'm just a Puerto Rican lady from the Bronx. Okay, just making it in the big tech world, and getting to chat with incredibly talented folks at RSA, and just hearing all of the exceptional brilliance that they are very generously sharing with the community. So it's I feel a little bit overwhelmed by the opportunity.
Oh yeah, I feel like we need to have like a part 2 of this show later in the week after the Blue Voyant party, so you can tell us about it.
Yes. What about the Blue
Yes.
Voyant party? Yes,
Yeah.
do that.
But as far as me, what am I doing? Oh yeah, I was just going to say this is like our last episode for Tech Heavy Month before we switch over to Partner Month next month, which we're going to 2 things that Ray just mentioned. is our theme for next month is number one, agentic AI, or our security copilot agents that have been developed by our partners and our partners who actually work with these things. Most of the partners, I think, Ray, that you'll be able to see this week at RSA. So, yeah, that's gonna be. That's why I'm super jealous, because we have partner month next week, and then you're there this week to talk to all those people. So it's pretty cool. But the unfortunate thing is, I mentioned I'll see Nisha next week, and I'll be at a conference in Vegas, which is like my first trip back to Vegas since COVID. I used to go to Vegas like 3 times a year, and then COVID destroyed that, and this is my first
Were
trip
you
back.
a super spreader? Is that what it was? You were Vegas
I
is now
was,
letting you back in. Is
yeah, I was patient zero. Yeah,
Yeah,
it was me.
pretty
that
much.
okay?
Yeah.
Is it-
Yeah,
Hey,
they still hold that against me. Here's
yeah,
Brody.
I haven't been in Vegas. Yes, in Vegas. I haven't been to Vegas in a long time. Brody,
Yeah.
what's up, man?
Yo,
Brody,
how's it
I
going,
don't,
Edward? How's it going, Ray? How's
Brody.
it going, Rod's
There,
Echo?
somebody at Blue Voyant, Jordan, big fan of Maple Leafs. Apparently, I don't understand the Canadian thing, but he reached out. He's like, "Did I hear? Are you on the MSI show? And also, did you like give a shout out to Blue Voyant? And most importantly, Maple Leafs." So I don't know about at least 1/3 of what
You,
the
you, you,
rundown.
you you just say yes. Yes, I did all of that. Yeah, can I get in a party for free now?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
it. That's
just
how
go
you
along
do
with it,
it.
Ray. Just go along with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. And
Yeah,
Rod is just giving you shit, by the way. Sorry. Yeah, you're doing well. Yeah.
yeah, Gary. Be like Ed. Be at the brewery house, the house of debauchery. This is where I'm at. The house of debauchery. There you
The
go.
brew
Well,
house.
that's
Nice,
that's
man.
your real location always. This is what we were talking about before the show. Everything else that we've had before is just a background. It's a fake
Yeah,
background.
that,
It's
that
like your
fake
house.
office. This,
Green
this is where I do
screen,
all the
yeah.
work. Yeah, you gotta emergency. Got here, emergency drinking beer, with the hops already in it.
Nice.
Pre hopped. There you go. Brody, what's going on, man? What you been doing? You have a good weekend? Your team win? Did you break something?
The team did not win this weekend. Tough. The series is now 2-2. Tough game. We'll see how they are tomorrow. Hopeful, but concerned. And we don't break anything in EAG security. We only build, transform, and modernize, Edward.
Build, transform, and modernize. Okay. Okay. Sure.
But we built, transformed, and modernized a design document over the last few weeks, and I'm just so sick of working in Microsoft Word after that. End of day Friday, it was like me and my team. We like all the little things. I get really OCD on design documents. They're very important. It's a key deliverable for customers. And this one, there's stats apparently at the beginning of the design document for this. It's for the it's for the Azure Landing Zone project, and it said 1,000 man hours were spent editing this document, and that's across like 5 individuals. It actually tracks it. So we spent like I don't know if that counts as like it just sitting on your screen while you're doing other things or not, but it's still an insane amount of time. And I'm happy that we're done, in air quotes, that part, and now we're moving on to the build phase where we're actually deploying the the custom build Azure Landing Zone built off of the CAF3 model, and the associated policies, and all the fun stuff that goes along with that, the new identity architecture. And I'm just really grateful for the team that I have, and I'm grateful that we don't have to be in the design document anymore for a while. So
I had to write too, man. I feel your pain. The good news is I was writing a Microsoft Sentinel health and maintenance document, and my manager thought it was worth turning into a blog. He's like, "This is actually pretty good." I like, really. I need to clean out the stuff that would identify the customer. So he sort of tasked me to, can you clean up? And I'd like to see you posted as a blog. I'm like, sure. So I did something for a customer. They're doing a transition over from Splunk. They want to know how to care and feed this thing because they're not going to bring on a partner. It's not going to be managed. So they're like, what are the key components, measurables, warning things about, is my environment healthy? Is it doing these things? So I sat down, I wrote it, and I'm like, oh, this seemed too co-polish. So let me put a personal touch on it, right? Throw the screenshots in there, do this thing, then write a little blurb on why you enable this workbook. Why do you need this playbook? Why are you looking at this particular query? You know, right? You can write an analytic. I wrote an analytic to monitor some of the health aspects of it. So give me some alerting around that. So it was fun to sit down and really get back into it, to get technical again. So as I wrote it, I built out the things in the lab that Rod and I share. And and so Rod, if you go in and you see a bunch of stuff that's turned on towards workbooks, queries, I wrote a couple of functions I left up there that I want to put in. That's me using that to build out the document. So I guess I will have to blog it. No use wasting a good document, right?
Blog that baby.
Blog it. Blog
You don't
it.
have to release it, just blog it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Because I don't want to put it on tech community stuff. By the time they get it, it's not your work anymore, right?
It's not yours, and yeah, they make all kinds of changes, and there's a
Yeah,
whole
I like the typos in my blog. It gives character
yeah,
to it. I like the misspelled words in it. I let you know.
it's endearing.
Yeah, there you go. I got a couple things technical. I was reading over a couple things. Majority of them around AI, but one of them is in about ACR, attack surface reduction stuff. I know that Ray put together an abstract about a potential presentation that she and I may try to get together and present at a conference. But on that note, there were two. And forgive me for the long post inside of the chat. There were two announcements about two attack surface reduction. One was to block a machine from booting into safe mode, and one was I can't think of the other one in here. I was reading it. I'm going to put this extremely long chat in here. Forgive me, Rod. I know you hate these things, but I'm gonna have them in the show notes for those who want to read while we talk. And there you go. It actually StreamYard's small enough to break it up into two different posts.
Yeah, yeah, pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So the links are in there.
Sweet.
Blocking machines will boot into safe mode, and there's one more in there. Block use of copy and impersonated system tools. So if you start to see system tools that are not built into it, like adversaries will come in and take, the name of system tools that's built into it, a NetDAG or something like that. It beats that impersonation of those tools. I think those tools have to be signed anyway, part of the OS. So that's in there. And I got like two more things inside the show notes, but this one's around Purview. It was a blog on how to secure your AI using Purview, and that's right there. Once again, it's stripped out the URL, but it's how to deploy Microsoft Purview DSPM for AI. I think that's data protection management. And Rod, isn't that the one that you were super sort of geared on? Is that
Yeah, one of them. Yeah.
yeah, one of them. I'm doing a lot of Purview stuff. So I started going through it. I got it set up. And I'll get the actual URLs, and they'll be in the show notes tomorrow for everybody. Rod will post the show, and then I'll come back and add the show notes. So I'll say the other two so we can get to our guest. It is Tech Heavy Month. This is the last show of the month. And we have an outstanding Security Copilot guest, Mr. Rick Copes. Rick, what's up, brother?
Hey, yeah, good to meet everybody. Happy to be here. So Rick Kotlarz, I'm a technical specialist, hyper-focused on Security Copilot. So unlike most technical specialists, which are spanning across our security compliance and modern work stack, I am focused on just one product, which gives me a lot of time and energy to really stress test the service, work with a lot of our customers, and try to get some value out of it.
Rick is one of the sharpest Security Copilot, and he's super, super giving. Some of the training that he's done, that he's posted around some 300 and 400 level Security Copilot things, from prompting to prompt engineering to plugins, is absolutely outstanding. He contributes a lot to the official Microsoft Security Copilot Git, and him and Rod have probably crossed paths sometime or another doing that type of stuff. I was excited to have you on the show, sir. You came highly recommended. I know you and I have done some work together, and so when you told me you would come on, I was super stoked about it. But especially doing Tech Heavy Month, you get to show your stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
With that being said, I'm gonna hand it over to you. I know that you want to get to your demo, talk through it first, and then you want to show us your stuff.
Yeah. So what I'm going to be doing is going over, a couple things around prompt engineering. What I've noticed is a lot of folks, when they're interacting with AI tools, especially Security Copilot and other copilots, they tend to just ask very generic questions. And then they should really be framing it in the context that I have two parts that I need to perform. I need the first part is to get information, and then the second part is going to be able to reason over that information or refactor that information or do something on behalf of the first request. Now, if you're just using AI tools to grab information, it's not really as high of a value, especially with some of those free tools like ChatGPT or Gemini or even Bing Copilot. Like if you're using these tools in context to just asking open-ended questions, most people are naysayers of AI. When they combine the two, they start to realize its true potential, and then they're just amazed at the amount of time that it saves. So today I'm going to be covering a few examples around that to try to get folks to reason or think about how they can use AI in a way that's more constructive
Yeah.
and shows value.
Yeah, if you want
So
to share your screen, I can put it to the
yeah,
stage. Yeah, one thing, and I'm super interested to see what you have to show us as well, because I think, um, in respect to that, I think that's one of the things that our customers sometimes have the most difficulty with is it's kind of understanding what to do next.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
used to maybe kind of getting their prompts, whether it's using ChatGPT or something else, and then going beyond that, I think, is where a lot of customers kind of are limited, because they expect it to do one thing, but it can actually do so much more. So I'm really interested in seeing
yeah,
this.
absolutely. And so a lot of folks, they start off, for folks who aren't familiar, Security Copilot is our generative AI tool that's wrapped around, our security and compliance and IT operations stack. So you've got, a long list of first-party, third-party plugins, as well as custom plugins which can be added. And then you've got skills, which are more or less functions or capabilities that are subsets within those plugins. And so this right here, this prompt that I have is where a lot of customers normally start. They're just asking for information. And in terms of value, this is a low value ask for folks who are experienced in Defender XDR. Where this may be a higher value is where potentially if I'm not an expert, if I don't know how to get that information, asking these open-ended broad questions is great. But for somebody who's even moderately, experienced, this is not a high value, result or question. And so if I were to expand this out, it gives me the information that I'm looking for, where it's got the incident IDs, it's got descriptions, and all of the other information that I requested. However, it's what's next, what comes after that. And so, to describe this in a little bit better fashion, you could say instead of just saying list the incidents over from Defender over the last 7 days, let's group it by severity. Let's start with the highest severity, and then I also include Markdown in there because LLMs love delimiters. They love any kind of delimiter, but Markdown especially because it has the context for formatting. So I've included some of those here, and if I expand this out to be able to see it a little better, you can see the prompt where I've explicitly stated that it's going to be in a Markdown code block, that I want it in this bulleted form, and then the last set of instructions, which is generate a report for me tailored for the SOC manager. So by executing that, it's that first part to grab the information, and then all of the instructions that go with it after the fact. And so now I get a much more regulated and formatted answer to my initial request. And now I'm starting to get value out of it because I'm instructing the AI to do something on behalf of that first data set or that chunk of information that I would have gotten here. And this is just, scratching the surface of what's possible. So, with generative AI, it will infer a lot of context based on what you prompt it with, but also what is previously in that session. And regardless of where you are in generative AI tools, normally there's, the initial prompt that you have here, but then there's subsequent data that's been returned and potentially other data elements that are in that entire workflow. And so if you are not prescriptive, it is looking for a data source. You don't want it to source that information from the LLM itself. You want it to come from a grounded source of truth. And so you folks need to really start thinking about it in that context. Now, by doing this, I'm getting information, but it still may be a low ask or a low value in terms of what I'm getting out of it. And so ultimately, I want to start taking that and going to the next level. And not to belabor the point here, but let me pull up a slide that just has a bulleted list of the things that you're looking for in this term context. Can you see that slide, or is it not sharing it? It doesn't look like it's sharing. Let me.
You may want to pull it over to the in front of it or something.
Yeah, let's try this again. Sorry about that. I thought I shared the entire screen. Entire screen. There we go. Okay. So, and there I am. I'm sharing it now. Okay. So when we're talking about large language models, and this applies to not just Security Copilot, applies to Bing Copilot, M365 Copilot, our competitor Copilots, any generative AI. You want to always give it a persona. You want to make sure that the model knows how it should be receiving this information and how it should be interpreting that information. So assigning a persona, whether that is you're an expert in governance, risk, and compliance, you're going to be reviewing purview compliance data, insider risk data, it doesn't matter, but give it a persona. And these are clear text instructions to say your role is to assume the role of or your role is to assume the position of an expert in whatever it is you're about to give them. And then, to the delimiter point, Markdown is great, but you don't have to stick with Markdown. You can use HTML. You can use your own delimiters as long as it understands that there's an object that is referenced as an entity, and that and then there's another section which is the instruction set. And so using those delimiters help the model understand what is in fact instructions and what is in fact the object, and then provide step-by-step instruction. Now, this is critical. You could think of that as if you were giving a brand new junior analyst or somebody who's new to the organization a step-by-step instruction set, so that there's no ambiguity. There's no area for it to misunderstand your instructions. And then in addition to those instructions, including examples that coincide with that instruction set. Now, you would think clear and specific and tone would be kind of obvious, but a lot of people forget those. And then last but not least, the iterative approach. You're not going to get prompt engineering right in the first time you use it, in the first time you try it. I, in fact, use AI to improve my AI, my AI prompting, should I say. And so I normally tell, M365 Copilot or even Security Copilot, I say, assume the role of a prompt engineering expert and review the following prompt. And then I feed it my prompt, and then it corrects it. And so all of these help to get to a better point where you're going from something that is very open and generic to something that is very focused and specific. And so another example of that is, I've got custom plugins that I tell folks when you're down here prompting it, you want to get away from the free prompting and start using prompt books for repetition and knowing that those are accurate. But then also with your KQL, you want to start developing your own KQL based plugins. And so one of them that I've got, which is fairly simple but an easy to follow proof of concept here, is you've got this KQL based plugin. And for those who aren't aware of our plugins, they're YAML based. They follow a YAML structure where you have a parent and a child object. But it's fairly simple, as you can tell here. And so you've got the skill name, which is just simply how you invoke the skill. And then I've got a target, which is just a log analytics workspace, and then the KQL that would run. Now, if I were to run this, within our defense, advanced threat hunting, and I were to not specify how many tables or how many rows to take, I'm going to get a large data set that is exceptionally too large for Security Copilot. In fact, most LLMs can't reason over that type of data. And so I always tell people, start off with a sample set instead of taking and trying to eat the whole elephant, chop it up. make a smaller subset. Okay. And so you've got a list of columns that are associated with this update table, and and when I run this, it's going to go ahead and ultimately, if I just stop and run it again, it should pull a much smaller subset of information. Now, right now, I'm projecting a lot of columns that I may not actually need. And so normally I tell folks, look at the raw data, look at what you're potentially reasoning over, and is there information that you actually don't need a large language model to reason over. In this case, the subscription ID is there and is replicated, and I may not need that in my output or for it to reason over. In fact, maybe I only care about the computer, the product, the resource group, and the full OS full name, and so I can tailor those within the plugin. But maybe I didn't develop the plugin. Maybe the plugin already exists, and then I just want to go ahead and have it reason over it, and then provide some assessments over those 4 columns. And so I can prompt it with that as well, and I can give it instructions on executing just those 4 columns and giving me that output. And then again, just like I just illustrated, to have it reason over it. Now, if I do that and I tell it to reason over it in the context of, say, security and risk, well, there's no CVE data in here. And so remember the two-part element that I described earlier, where I've got to have the information and then prompt it with something else. If I don't provide that, it's literally just going to look at this information and using standard risk information. It's going to say, well, bind is typically an external facing service for DNS, and so that's probably a high risk. But I can prompt it, and I can run this same query with this skill here, and I can tell it in the instruction set that maybe resources in the CTF cat resource group are resources that are external facing. And so because I've given it that extra information, that extra insight, then it will reason over it in a different way. Now, all of this is seems pretty obvious, but a lot of folks don't include those 2 elements. And so, going one step even further, I could have a KQL plugin that goes much deeper. So I've got this skill that I wrote. It's analyzing the mailbox rules for all users within a time frame. But it's a much larger KQL query, and so it's actually looking at the JSON for each mailbox that is created within the tenant. And when I execute this, this is not something that humans actually want to read. No analyst says, "Hey, I get excited over reading JSON rules all day long." That's not something that most folks want to look at. In fact, this was actually a customer ask that they were going through this on a regular basis, and they said, "Hey, I would love to use AI to just reason over all of this information here and tell me what is a high risk and what is a low risk." And so I said, okay, cool, let's do that. Let's do part 1. Let's grab all this information, and then let's craft a very, very well written prompt that is going to guide the LLM to do that. Now, again, if I just say something generic that says, analyze the rules, tell me what I should be concerned with, concern is highly, highly subjective to my environment. Maybe I'm not concerned with certain types of actions because my environment is secure in a certain way, or maybe there are things. And if I ask it a very generic, open-ended question, I get just that. I get very open-ended, generic responses. And 9 times out of 10, customers read this and they go, "Well, that's fine. It wasn't wrong, but this is not what I was looking for." And so you actually want to go into a much more descriptive element. And if I go back and I start looking at the mailbox rules example here, and I go into a very well-written prompt, I've got the skill name that will invoke the request to get those JSON rules and mailbox rules, and then I've given it a role. Who are you? You are a SOC analyst, threat hunting mailbox-based attacks. And then I tell it some information about some types of different attacks. I go on further to talk about the different mailbox rule actions and operations. And again, these are elements that are in the KQL that's being returned during the query. And so I've given it a very, very descriptive rule set on how it should be reasoning over my data. In addition, I've included some keywords. Now, a lot of times people think, well, if I give it this keyword set or any other types of rules, then what happens if there's something that's outside of this? Like right now, I've got a couple different file attachment sizes types, and I didn't include DLLs, but DLLs could potentially be harmful. Because I've given it this seed information, it understands the context of what I'm trying to get to. And if there was a mail rule with a DLL, it would flag it and say, hey, this was similar to this extension set that you had, and so maybe it's a high risk. And likewise, I've continued on this prompt, told it what tasks to do, what deliverables I want, and then again, the formatted output, how I want every single analysis of all of the information to be responded to me. And so I go from this very non-consistent, non-conformative, response to giving it that information request and then the full instruction set on what I want. And now the output gives me how many users are in there, the rule set, 1 of 4, a level of confidence. It gives me all of the information that I'm looking for, and it gives it to me in a way that as a SOC professional, if I'm using this to update my tickets or email or Teams messages, this is the consistency that I'm looking for. In fact, this has value, and all of a sudden, I go from this generic response to, yes, I love the AI. I love that it's adding additional information to my tickets that gives me the type of time savings that I'm looking for in terms of getting a value from Security Copilot and other AI tools if you're using it in those ways. So went through a lot there. And I could keep going down this rabbit hole, but I'm just curious from anybody. I guess anybody in the comments or on the call, what your
Yeah.
thoughts are.
So it sounds like there's a lift at the beginning as you're constructing that prompt book, creating your YAML file, and you're putting the work in because your keyword list. I don't know if you use something to generate that keyword list,
I
or
used
did you?
AI.
There you go. Use AI, and then you could do something. I saw a very cool use case. I did it for a customer, and then I saw someone who had completely taken it. They referenced some of the SANS, elements of compromise material,
Yep.
and then they uploaded it as a file. And when they wrote it, they said reference this file with these particular event
Yep.
IDs that are indicators of compromise. Like you see a bunch of 3729s or 4771s, right? You see an RDP attacks. So I can
Mm-hmm.
imagine you can say you could write a prompt book that looks for very specific exploitative evidence, like someone's using WMI, someone's using remote PowerShell sessions. So and once you write it the first time, it looks like the lift gets lighter, right? You
It,
just
it it
modify.
it totally is. Yeah. I mean, I will say prompt engineering, I've been playing around with generative AI tools for about 2 years now. Right before Microsoft invested into OpenAI, and I've just been blown away at all of the advances. But I think the best way to describe this is if you were going to write a contract or review a contract for somebody performing work, that's the level of verbosity that you kind of need to get a very high degree of value, and without any I'd say any without most errors. When you get to that point where you're very specific, the value starts to increase exponentially because you're giving it no room for deviating outside of that instruction set. And if you're okay with it deviating, just by inferring those things, then you can do that as well. The nice part about generative AI is even if you don't go to this, you can give it examples that are more along the lines of programming in a sense without being a prompt or a programming expert. One of the others in this prompt engineering workshop that is in the chat is this one. Not this one, the last module. Module 3, which talks about how you can manipulate certain data. And so in this one, I've got a purview prompt. It does the same thing. for those who are familiar with purview alerts and or alerts in general, for purview, there's a DL in the first criteria of the prompt. And for security center, or not security center, for Defender XDR, the alert ID does not include that. And so if I were to show what that looks like, I apologize, I don't have those ran, but the prompt engineering around it basically focuses on being able to manipulate that piece of the results to, programmatically tell it, say, hey, remove the DL from the actual alert set and create me a URL that is including on that. And so the thing that I love about generative AI is you don't have to be a syntax expert. In fact, you can just give it instructions as long as those instructions are verbose enough for it not to make a mistake. And so with this example here, I've started off by asking it to give me DLP alerts, and then, asking it to not only give me those DLP alerts, summarize those alerts, reason over it, but then create links that allow you to get to it as well.
Yeah.
And it's able to reason over that output, manipulate the output, and refactor it in a way that has value to the users. In this case, where there's the actual links in the output that didn't exactly exist in the input to begin with.
Yeah, and that's a big ask for alerting, is that if you're going to refer to an alert or something, give me the ability to go to the origin of the alert. Get me directly to the portal, and I would
Yeah.
think that it's going to use the same login security context that you are logged in to be able to do it, or prompt
Yeah.
you when you go to the link. Re-multi-factor, re-authenticate. That makes sense, especially in the DLP alerts and the policies, right? The other
Yep.
thing is sometimes take me to the offending file of of of
Yeah.
interest. And
Yeah.
don't just say this file is classified and mislabeled. Take me to it and let me see
Yeah.
the policy in it.
And
Okay.
so with all of that, it's still those two parts. It's grabbing the information and reasoning over the information. And a lot of people, they get stuck on, down here, they hit a wall where they're asking a question, they're prompting it, and either Security Copilot doesn't have that skill already built into it, or if it does, it's not in the same format that they're expecting. And so I help customers, explore the skills through building out custom skills with KQL queries or with interacting with the Graph API. But once they wrap their head around the fact that it's those two parts, and that writing those prompts, the more verbose you get, the better off the results are typically. Then they start to really think about them in a different context. But almost every customer that I've worked with goes through those phases where they're in the embedded experience, they're tinkering with it, then they jump in this standalone experience, they start asking it questions, they're not impressed with the answers and the responses, and then I say, okay, well, what is the workflow that you're trying to accomplish with this? And let's focus on that, and then building out those skills either through the built-in capabilities or writing our own plugins, or and then once you have that, then reasoning over it. And
Yeah.
once they pair those two parts, they really start to see the value. And then a lot of folks, they're scared of custom plugins. They don't understand them. They don't know where to go. And so the GitHub repo that we have, the official repo, is a great place to start. And there's a lot of custom plugins in there, and different things. And I'll
And
just show that.
yeah, my advice to customers is if you have an example that's actually functioning, deconstruct it, take a line out of it, and see what it breaks or what it doesn't
Yeah.
give you back. You made a comment, which is one of them. It sounds like a hack or a tip or whatever else, but because people are like, oh, that doesn't work. When you write a prompt, ask Copilot, any one of them, how could this prompt be better? And watch what
Yes.
happens, right?
Yes.
It'll come back
Yeah.
and give you
In
something.
fact, funny enough, so there, if you're familiar with the AI Foundry, and it's kind of a fork in here, but
Yeah.
there's actually, if you've ever spun up an AI Foundry instance, right now you can get the new model that's not available outside of the API. But I can take a prompt that is very basic. So this prompt right here, where I've got these elements here, and I'm like, okay, well, I want to make this better. The AI Foundry actually has this little generate prompt button, and I hope we get this in Security Copilot. So I can paste those 4 or 5 line items, and I can hit send. And what it'll do is it generates this prompt that is freaking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And if I expand this out, it includes all of those elements here. I should copy it out. And if I pull this up here, the LLM prompts that I said where you've got a kind of a tone and a role and all that, some of them are missing. But look at this, it's got the steps outlined, it's got it in Markdown, it gives the examples. And so this right here would be hugely beneficial if I just wanted to quickly prototype a really decently good written prompt. And so I could say, oh, okay, well, let me tailor this now a little bit, because now I have some examples and some output that, while it's not perfect, it is kind of, getting closer and closer to those Markdown examples that I showed just a few minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the AI Foundry is a great resource there. But even if you don't have access to that, M365 Copilot, Security Copilot, other copilots, using the AI to improve your prompt is definitely going to help you understand it. In fact, I would say using AI in any capacity, even if it's not Security Copilot, is going to improve that. Asking it to give you questions, to interview you, basically, to be able to reason over and highlight things that you may be missing. I've been in IT for over 20 years, and I think I'm a pretty good prompt engineer, but every time I ask AI to improve my prompts, it gives me other things, and I'm like, man, I missed that. So
Yeah.
great
Yeah,
points.
well, and I think a couple things to highlight there, right? So I think this is super important. And I love how you kind of highlighted all the details of that prompt, right? So you're giving it everything. I think a lot of people still, even today, they kind of relate generative AI to a search engine, and they still kind of take
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
that tact where they're just trying to enter as few words as possible and get away with it.
Yeah.
But it's just like any other technology that in being in IT that we have experienced. So right there was PowerShell. We didn't learn that overnight. We had to figure out
No.
which tool to use to learn PowerShell and all of the different modules and stuff that we could utilize. KQL was the same way. Where do I do this thing? How do I learn this query language, right? And so kind of what you have presented here, but the one thing I definitely want to highlight is the importance of using the right tool for the job. So obviously, currently, you don't want to use Security Copilot to improve your prompts, because why? It's going to cost you something
Yeah. It's
to
definitely going to be an
improve your
expensive ask.
prompts. That's why I think M365, and I love that you mentioned AI Foundry, because I wrote that down. I'm going to go mess with that a little bit later, because I've been wanting to do that, but been
Yeah,
reluctant for whatever reason. But that's super powerful.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the AI Foundry. So like I mentioned, the GPT 4.1 model was just dropped, I think a week and a half ago. And right now, even if you have ChatGPT, you can't access this. You have to interact with it through the API. This model is 15 times cheaper than the current GPT 4.0 model, and it's faster and more accurate. And it's also updated up until I think 2 months ago. So it's a as these models continue to progress, they're going to get better and better. But it's a good point, to use the right tool for the right thing. I recently started playing in here just because I wanted to access the new model and see what it could and couldn't do. And I actually was doing a comparison. I was asking the same information here as I was in M365 Copilot, and then I was comparing it to Security Copilot, and just comparing the differences between all of them. And it was interesting, the level of detail that when you're directly interacting with it, what it will do, versus M365 Copilot and Security Copilot, because we have responsible AI elements that are, they're reasoning over it. It's eating up some of your tokens, but it's also tailoring the output for a security, compliance, and IT ops perspective. Whereas here, I can prompt it for anything. I can tell it it's going to be a master chef, and it should, create me a Michelin star recipe. Security Copilot's not going to do that. So, different ways to interact with it, definitely. And then also another thing I almost forgot, token limitations. The new GPT 4.1 model that is now available through API, is has a million token context. So a much larger input and output token perspective. And for those who aren't familiar with tokens, you can think of, for lack of a better analogy, tokens would be the words of a sentence or a paragraph or a paper. And so the more words you can take in and the more words you can take out for output, the larger the memory context. Now that's not exactly how tokens work, but that's a simple analogy.
Yeah, it's interesting too because we're talking about all the Microsoft Copilots this week. Last week we had Nathan Swift on, who everybody knows Nathan. He's messing around with Grok to do very very similar things. So I think what we're seeing, at least in the industry, is all these different generative AI tools. It's like month to month they leapfrog each other. Here's this model, this is better, and here's this model, and this is more up to date. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
And the thing that I liked about it is, and I started playing around with the AI Foundry after we had Sergey on the show a couple of months back. The way he was going into it and showing it, and so I got it stood up in our lab, and it's amazing what it can do. What it's basically doing is taking the layman's work, instead of me taking it out of Azure and then going over to Grok or going over to something else and copying it down and then bringing it back. I can just keep it all in this developmental thing, and it's
Yeah. And it's meant for development, but yeah, I love the fact that you've got your models. I can deploy multiple models here if I wanted to. I can go to deployments and just add one. It's a great tool for quickly deploying, and not just our models that we interface with, like OpenAI. I mean, it's got a ton of them in here, and so it's.
Yep.
I think even DeepSeek's listed here. So like, I mean, yeah. So like, we have pretty much this is your model marketplace to have those enterprise level models that are in your own environment, that you're not necessarily going to a third party service, and so you're able to interact with these really quickly, spin them up almost instantly, and then they give you an API key and some other stuff, so you can build on it. But the chat element is nice because now you're just like, hey, here's my interface. I can just type whatever I want, and if I wanted to clear it, it's there.
Yeah,
So
and keeping it all here also satisfies responsible AI use and learning boundaries, right? So people don't want you taking the information from one aspect that they have no control over, personal account, and then doing something there and not being able to trust it, and you don't have to go out. Yeah, I'm planning a little bit more. We may have to get somebody on the show to, a data and AI guy to just go really deep into it. But I'm seeing it. Someone just put something in the chat. 4.5. What again? What did I miss?
Premium prompt
4.5. Yeah, noodles at it again. There you go.
Yeah.
So as you go through and you're talking about better prompt engineering, better prompt book creation, and everything else, what has been one of the more novel ideas? I saw that you had an idea from one of your customers to say, hey, put this in something that's useful for me. I can read JSON, but I prefer not to. One of the things I've been scratching my head, I know it exists, but I don't see more people using it, is being able to do voice to prompt. So some people just like, oh my God, the time it takes me to type the prompt.
Yeah.
I feel better having a conversation like Star Trek, computer, yes.
Yes.
Give me the better readout, blah, 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 rather than try to type it. Have you run across that?
I haven't, but as I tend to talk out loud when I'm giving demos, and I've actually had a few times where I'm in Security Copilot and I'm typing in here, and I'm talking as I'm typing, and people say, "Whoa, is it listening to you?" And I have to laugh, and I say, "No, we don't have the little microphone icon there." But on a personal level, like I use it all the time in my in ChatGPT, the paid version of that. I have one of those for personal use. I love it. I have my phone with the iPhone with Siri. I have it connected to my ChatGPT paid account, and so I ask it questions all the time, and I love that I don't have to type it all out because it's so much easier to talk, right?
Yeah. I learned that from Rod. I started to use Gemini on my Droid phone, and just to be careful because it's listening to you. It responded to me one day. And I'm like, I didn't ask you anything, and it said, it basically, yes, you did, and I'm gonna give you an answer. With the time we have remaining in the show, what's your thought about all the new shiny? Because this show is the show of the new shiny. The new shiny seems to be agents. How is that affecting the way you're going about your prompting now?
So yeah, that's a great question. Agents rely on the same criteria for verbose input. So,
Mhm.
just let's just I'll draw on a screen real quick. So if this were the entry point for an agent, it's going through. It has an instruction set that it goes through, and then at some point in there, it's going to fork and do something to additional agents down here, right? And so this instruction set is critical for the agent to know which path to take. Do I
Mhm.
go the green path? Do I go the blue path? Do I go the yellow path? And so your instruction right there needs to be on a very well written, prompt engineered, verbose level, like I illustrated earlier. Otherwise, it's going to potentially misinterpret the request, and then also the subsequent elements of the agent, all of those subtasks, the skills that it needs to invoke. Those are also skills that are either in Security Copilot, it's another plugin. But if you're in Copilot Studio, there is still an information grab or a capability where it's grabbing information and it's reasoning over it. So all agents do is they aggregate what I already went over on a multi-level basis. And they make it so that you as a human don't have to code things like regular expression or flow diagrams in the sense that there's some type of logical statement. The AI understands your natural language statements of saying if this then that, and it creates that flow for you. But prompt engineering is critical to making agents work effectively in that sense.
and and you're going to find customers who are going to be very astute to that, because if you have partners who are going to come in and write these agents for you,
Hmm.
unless you have some type of IP lock on those, I don't know what that mechanism may be. Your customers are going to test the efficiency of that agent, especially if they can go in and
Yeah.
manipulate what you said, that instruction set, or just extrapolate it out and then build their own so they don't break the thing that you paid them for. I will
Yep.
take copy yours, and I'm going to run over here, and I can see that this is running much more efficiently than the way you wrote it. So this is one of the few times that you're going to be able to actually have a value add to a partner's assistance, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm writing better prompts than you and I'm writing better KQL, queries than you, and I'm be able to write more efficient prompt books, partners are going to have to stay up on their toes, right?
Oh
Now,
yeah.
I don't know if you can lock down an agent's instruction uh, surface.
So that's the hard part because there's always going to be some type of jailbreak, and I
Yeah.
saw one from last week where it was a jailbreak, and basically it allowed you to extract the system prompt,
Yep.
the prompts that are running behind the scenes, and that's always going to exist. It's kind of like if you're a threat hunter, running something like Mimikatz to dump what the credentials that are in memory. As soon as you get them dumped, you have them, and that's always going to be that cat and mouse thing. So I almost think that it's on par with security through obscurity. It's not a good way to build a company if the value is just in your prompts. I think for something like Security Copilot, it's not just the prompts themselves, it's the extensibility of what it connects to. And then I would say that if you're another third party vendor, having something that allows people to quickly develop it to improve their prompts, like this thing right here. I wish that was in M365 Copilot. I wish that was in Security Copilot. I wish every AI tool had this fix my prompt button.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so if they could do that and dynamically create things that are much better, then I think we're in a better state. But yeah, the prompt engineering is real interesting.
I
Well
think the
said.
more. Go ahead, Bill. Brody. I'm sorry.
No, I just think that's the on top of the really interesting deep dive that we're talking about here today. I think that's just a really great takeaway. Is constantly, check your own efforts to see how you could be doing it better using AI to help with your prompt. But then I also really liked Rick's idea of why doesn't it just do that all the time anyway, right? Be like, hey, another way you might want to do this is, and if you wanted to get more results in X or Y, you might want to try different avenues. I think that would be a fantastic bonus feature, just ongoing help people, regardless if they were asking for it or not.
They do
So
do it in
we
certain
had
co-pilots.
we had a partner on. Remember Performata? We had them on
Mhm.
a few months ago, And so this kind of leads me to my question. Actually, I'm kind of curious. They use Logic Apps with the Security Copilot connector, and they were able to actually take the prompts that were entered, vet the prompts during the whole Logic App process to build a better prompt without them ever having to do anything or go to AI
Yeah.
Foundry. And then the result was exactly what they wanted out of it. Obviously, it took some coding and some stuff to do that. But so what is the difference? Help me in my mind to understand what's the difference between building an automated process using Logic Apps and the Security Copilot connector versus these agents.
So the primary difference is that logic apps are going to be static in the sense that if you create a conditional statement, it's always going to be those conditions that you put in there. Whereas the agent is able to understand the intent of those conditions and dynamically change as those conditions grow in terms of usability. And so I personally think building with logic apps is probably going to be something more that a SOC would want, because they want to know that things are specified within a certain context. But maybe they've done it in a certain way where the agent is written that you have two choices, and then if you don't pick one of those two choices, then terminate. Don't do anything else.
Yeah.
So I could see
Well,
where it could potentially go that way too.
well, and I can also see
They
a
have
reason why
the
you wouldn't.
phishing agent now, right?
Yeah.
I would see. I give you a reason why I wouldn't want it to automatically improve. Here's a number one reason. It's the number one bane of what's going on with Security Copilot right now. Cost. Because if this thing is continually running, trying to improve itself, right? It's not free.
Yeah. Yeah,
If
it's
it's
not.
going back, somebody's paying for this constant improvement. And I think that the other thing would be, as you said, I'd like a known constant
Yeah.
in my security operation. So the least I hunt for variables, right? If you're an incident responder, you're a threat hunter. I'm looking for what's the term? Least amount of execution. That's the
Yep.
variable. This has never happened before, or it happens in rarity. But if I see something that's not constant and it's changing, trying to adapt, now you've taken away that constant, and you put X's too many times inside my equation. That might be the only reason I can see why you don't want it to do improvement. But Sergey came on the show, did a great job. Nathan was
He's great.
showing it. Nathan was showing, how he was using to build containers and with the DNS twist stuff. And then we had Performano. They were on. That was a good one. It was one more guest that we had, Mr. Robert Disney, where he was showing that he was using it to improve his coding. Right now, GitHub Copilot will do it automatically. As it writes, it'll debug for you. Not debug, but suggest it.
Yeah.
Suggest, well, this line right here does this, and you could probably obscure this line or comment this line out. So I know it does it. I've seen it. Until you fix the cost, I don't want to do anything too much, too automatic from it.
I think that as these models improve, and they're improving by orders of magnitude, it's crazy how fast they're improving. And not to mention the cost is going smaller or lowering with each improvement. And so I imagine that's right around the corner. But I as somebody who wants consistency, I want to know that certain things can be varied, but other things need to be pretty much hard coded.
Yeah.
And so I could see an opportunity for both. But the cost is right now is the big factor in a lot of folks, especially like you mentioned, if something's running every day or every night or every 24 hours or whatever, like those costs get out of hand really quickly.
AKA agents.
Yeah.
Right? So Microsoft has debuted all of their internal built agents. It's all over LinkedIn and everything else. I encourage people to go look at some of the demo videos that they're put out publicly. It's very informative to get an understanding. But I think before you get to agents, everyone, you still need to go back and have a fundamental understanding of what regenerative AI is overall, vendor agnostic, and then you pivot into the vendors of choice to understand how they manifest it, right? Because if you don't have that, it can be a little bit frustrating.
Yeah,
Right?
and the good thing is, like, everything that I've showed, I focused on Security Copilot because that's where I primarily work, but it applies to any generative AI not specifically to Security Copilot. So you can take that information and apply it to, any generative AI solution, assuming that it does take prompts.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this has been a great show, Rick. Anything you want to give us to our listeners before we, make sure that we respect your time here?
No, no. I was just gonna say I challenge anybody who's a naysayer of AI to really start using it on a daily basis and asking it questions and as Rod put, don't use it like Google or Bing. Don't ask it questions that you can search for in other ways. Use it to search, but then potentially reason over that information. So you're doing those two parts, and then creating workflows. You'll quickly see that I can't live without it. Even if they increase the cost of ChatGPT tenfold, I'd probably still pay for it for the value that I'm getting on a personal level. So it's crazy when you really start harnessing it. It has a lot of value.
Who knew, right? I mean, 2 years ago, I'm going to use this thing like multiple times a day, and yeah, it's not like it's addictive. It's just so super helpful. You feel like you're dumb most of the time when you don't use it.
I'm telling you, I think we talked about it, and every one of us gave us why we use it, and I think maybe Brody and I were on the same thing. It helps me get started. That's the hardest thing I have. Well, once I get started on it, I start to lean on it less as I'm getting into the meat of something that I'm doing. But it's a great get started tool. I put my head around an idea, you just throw it in there, and if you can learn how to talk to it as though it's I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. Talk to it as a peer. I won't say as another human, but as a peer, you'll see the interaction comes a little bit. But the hard part is, I keep saying talk to it, which we don't. We have to learn how to type to it as though it's a peer. And when I write emails, I want my emails to be the shortest they can. I know I do, and that's not a good way to go inside AI. But
I'm guilty of not using it as much as I should with our Office suite, only because like I in my previous role as a cloud solution architect, I used it all the time because I have a tendency to go deep really fast, and not everybody that I talk to is at that technical level. So I would write a response, and then I would say, okay, this is for a C-level exec. Can you make it less technical without losing context? And it would do a great job. Right now, I'm hyper focused on Security Copilot, so almost every interaction I have is pretty technical. But on a personal level, I was just recently in the market to shop for a truck, and if you've ever done any car shopping, you know that whatever vehicle trim line you have, the options and the packages differ from trim to trim to trim. And I was trying to wrap my head around this, and I was like, I'm stuck here. I'm trying. I'm hitting walls left and right, going on the websites for the automotive manufacturer site, and I'm trying to compare it. So I just downloaded the PDFs, sent them up to ChatGPT, and said, make me a table and explain to me all the packages and how they differ from
yep.
trim to trim for these years. And it did it in seconds. And I was like, oh my God, why didn't I do this to begin with?
And I was there with you. I was helping someone out, and I can tell you that these car companies, the format that came from, he bought a shopping comparison from Consumer Reports. I could tell they were using AI. You can just see the way it was formatted, and you just pay $17.95. That now you could have just paid $20 a month and use it all the time, right? But yeah, you're right. I throw stuff in there and just say do a comparison or what is the best or what do you'll get better in the prompting. Stay away from subjective prompts. Try to make your prompts objective. Try to speak the way you try to type the way you speak, and instead of hoping that it gives you the answer, I like to sort of prompt in a way that this is the answer I expect. Prove to me that this is not what I'm looking for, right? Trust and verify. But Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure.
This is the first year that we've did Tech Heavy. I think we got a hit. This will be the first annual, and you got to close it out. So that means that you have to come on and host when we do Tech Heavy next year. Or you can come on and co-host any show or any theme month that you want. Absolutely. We got free beer and chips. That's what we pay you. And tokens. We get you some tokens. So everyone, thanks for participating with us for the month of April on our first annual Tech Heavy. I hope you enjoyed all our guests, all the live demos. You can go back and rewatch them on YouTube. Thanks to to Nathan Swift, who's agreed to come on and moderate our Discord channel alongside Noodle. That's going to be a great hit to get that revitalized, and we're looking forward to next month, which is around the corner, for our third annual Partner Month, where we're going to talk to partners who want to showcase their agentic AI, whatever they call it, right? I made up a word.
Agentic.
Agentic. So
Yeah.
thanks everyone. We'll see you next week. And light on my